off the season with an exhibition opener game against Carroll College of Montana this evening at 7 p.m. at Gill Coliseum. Excited to see some of those new guys this year, along with Tinkle coming back and being named among one of the favorites to win the Conference Player of the Year, and also has been named to the watch list of the Julius Erving Award for the best small forward in the country. And of course, women's basketball, as mentioned numerous times, and if you've heard around campus, they will be playing an exhibition game against Team USA at Gill Coliseum. Scott Rourke's squad has a fun one there, as Team USA is traveling around the West Coast for the most part to participate in some exhibition games. This is open to the public. Some of the greatest players in the history of the WNBA, including Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Elena Deladone, are some of these. And senior Michaela Pivic has been tabbed to the Cheryl Miller Award watch list. Of course, Cheryl Miller is the sister of Reggie Miller, former NBA star, WNBA star, one of the greatest of her era, and if not ever. So this is pretty much a selection as one of the top small forwards in the country, as well as what we mentioned earlier for Tinkle. And also, Destiny Slocum was named to the Lieberman Award watch list as the best point guard in the nation. So they start the season at number 6 in the country, and most preseason polls have them in 3rd place for the Pac-12. Now, men's and women's golf each have one more tournament to finish off the fall season, as they are both in the top 25 this year. Great stuff for the golf teams. The men's soccer team are at 5-5-1 as they come back from a road trip to Stanford and UW with a tie and a win against them. Now they visit, actually, San Diego State on October 24th, tomorrow, and to UCLA on the 27th. All 5 of Oregon State's defeats this season actually have come from a 1-goal margin. Whoa. So they're grinding them out this year for sure.
A lot of close games.
Oh, yeah. Women's soccer team have simmered down a little bit after that hot 8-0 start with a tie and loss in its last 3 games to Stanford, Cal, and Washington, all tough company. Now they go to Tempe, Arizona to face off against the Sun Devils, and then travel down the highway to Tucson to play the Wildcats of Arizona. The women's volleyball team is coming off a 5-game skid, unfortunately. However, 3 of those matchups were against top 25 opponents. Now Grace Massey and co. are back on the road for a 4-game trip. First off, against Arizona and ASU, as the women's soccer team are. Now, we are getting into football with the Beavers, of course, coming off that down-to-the-wire dub in the Bay Area at Memorial Stadium in Berkeley, winning 21-17. The Beavers are now at 3-4 and hovering around 500 for the first time in some time. They were also in 2nd place in the North behind the Ducks at 2-2. With just 5 games to go in the season, there are some talks of possible bowl aspirations, right, but a buzz around Beaver Nation that we are very excited for here.
Oregon State, I mean, who would have thought that coming into the season that you would have this team that went 2-10 last year, 3 combined wins in the past 2 seasons, and here they are with 3 wins already. I mean, Vegas set their win total on the season at 2.5, already surpassed that. I mean, it's just incredible to see what the progress that Jonathan Smith's done here in year 2. And for Oregon State, actually, we'll be joined later in the broadcast by rivals BeaversEdge.com. Managing editor Brenden Slaughter will talk some football, a lot of great stuff out of practice today, especially or for the Beavers. No game coming up this week. Next one will be down in the desert against Arizona, followed up by the next home game the following Friday against Washington. So Oregon State, I mean, got up early. It was a 14-0, and then California scored 17 unanswered, and the Beavers, faced one of those times where over the past few seasons you would see them kind of fold or fall apart, and instead Oregon State put together a really nice drive. Huge play, 3rd and 10, Artavis Pierce with a handoff that went for 20 yards, and then ultimately B.J. Baylor getting into the end zone there. But, I mean, just give me your thoughts kind of on the second half of that game, Soren, because that was one of those times where past Beaver teams would have, you assume that they would have given up or at least
folded in a sense.
Right, yeah. Right. So I just want to hear what your takeaways were, I guess, from that second half against Cal.
So I had some keys going into the game, and one of the major ones was hanging in there, as we've discussed, against the matchup against Hawaii and of course Stanford, both opposite in terms of scoring early and late. But we saw them hang in there after building a solid lead that they let go earlier this season at one point. And we saw a complete game for the Beavers against a legitimate Pac-12 foe. And we also saw that the defense really can be good. I mean, they had to regroup and bounce back.
Right.
We didn't really know how they were going to react after. I mean, it was just a demoralizing loss for anyone in front of their home crowd, homecoming game against Utah. But the fact that there were some interesting calls there. Cal came into the second half and they got that, was it the pass interference call?
Right.
That Smith was irritated with.
Well, I think it was actually talking about it after the game. I guess Blue Adams was the one who was actually the one who officially got the call. I mean, he was the one who was animated on the sideline.
Yeah.
You know, Smith didn't really want to, he's not going to throw any of his assistants under the bus, but he kind of owned up and said, yeah, you know, it's pretty funny. I think he said afterwards, he goes, well, you know, it's kind of time for me to get one. So anyway, Smith owned that. But yeah, that was the pass interference call. But how about Westland native Jaden Grant coming away with a huge interception there on the Hamika Rashid tip? I mean, that was a huge play. Grant's first interception of his career, and even better, that's Oregon State. No turnovers again, forced a turnover, increasing that turnover margin.
You know, I spoke to Jaden actually yesterday over the phone. I'm doing an article on him for the Barometer this coming week. But I was asking him about comparing this squad to last season's at this point in the year. He described them as more tight, discipline, etc. But he just sees it on both sides of the ball. They hold each other accountable in a different way that he didn't see. There's just a change in the locker room feel. But I also asked him about his interception, any excitement, any different feels afterwards. And just dead serious, no change in any inflection. And he literally just said, you know, I was looking at the clock immediately. I thought that this might have done something for it, but it wasn't like we sealed the game or anything like I was quoting to him. But seriously, really fun to watch that one after all the injuries he's had to come back and have that incredible will to fight on.
Right, and unfortunately, speaking of injuries, Nick Datchell of the Oregonian just coming up out of practice today. Lamone Williams, senior defensive end, 6-year senior, sustained an undisclosed injury. Apparently, it came against UCLA, so his season will be done, and also, unfortunately, as it's his 6th year, his career at Oregon State. So him, Addison Gums, Mikey Alfieri, the running back, safety Mason Moran, and DN Jeremy Reichner tore his ACL in the preseason, and then Kali'i Montalban, offensive lineman, joining that list of players who are out for the season. Still hope that Andre Hughes-Murray, senior outside linebacker, could get back and play a game or two. That'd put him in the red shirt category, hopefully. And again, coming out earlier this week, Coach Smith said that Trevon Bradford, senior wide receiver, he hadn't used his red shirt year yet, so he got cleared by the medical staff, so he'll have 5 games to play 4 to preserve that red shirt year. But still, I mean, think about what the Oregon State offense has been able to do. Now you add another weapon in Bradford. You get that senior leadership. I mean, the whole 9 yards. It's Brian Lindgren said it best. He goes, it's one of those guys you can take a quick pass and turn it into 20 to 50 yards. I mean, just the big playability of Bradford is going to be great.
Well, it's almost gone without saying also. We were talking so much about Cal's injuries before this game, especially with Josh Yoon, of course, who we had on the phone call last week from Cal Berkeley and their Daily Californian. But we were comparing it to their quarterback, their offensive line injuries. We really have a significant amount on ours, or the Beavers do on their side with couple. I mean, Andre Hughes-Murray isn't he a captain, or he was preseason?
He was named the defensive captain.
Trayvon's a senior,
right?
And
then you lost I already mentioned it, but Jeremy Reichner. He was another senior and big part of that defensive line.
Serious leaders there.
But for Oregon State, the other bonus is that you get to see some freshmen step up, and some of those names have been Luke Musgrave, tight end, JoJo Forrest, Omar Spates.
JoJo Forrest has been fantastic.
And Omar Spates, oh my goodness, in the middle linebacker spot, just such a hard place to step in immediately and fill that void. But he's been doing a great job. So those 3 will not use a red shirt this year. They've played in 7 games, so NCAA rules they can't for red shirt. And then safeties Akili Arnold and Alex Austin. They've Austin's played in 4 games and Arnold in 3, so they're kind of up in the air as to whether or not. But still, it's kind of nice, I guess, for some of those guys, as you saw with Bradford, who didn't use his redshirt year. He's got that ability to use it if an injury, I mean, God forbid an injury happens to one of these guys, but I mean, it's football, the nature of the game. Later down the road, you have that ability to go back and gain another year of eligibility. So Oregon State, again, we'll have Brenden Slaughter coming up at about 5:15. Get a call in from him, Beaver's Edge managing editor. But one other thing I wanted to touch base on really quickly before we talk to Brenden was the kicking change, actually, for Oregon State. So senior Jordan Schucare lost the kicking job in practice, was benched in favor of the freshman Everett Hayes. And from what we saw, obviously the Beavers didn't kick a field goal, but 3 extra points right down the middle. And those are some things that Schucare has actually struggled with.
Well, you wonder with kicking a lot if it's mental.
Right.
Sometimes I believe Schucare has a talent for it from what we've seen, but sometimes things get in your head, especially after missing some easy ones. But Daniel Rodriguez, special teams player of the week again. Yeah, punter, he is killing it.
I mean, yeah, great job, D-Rod.
Yeah.
Does it? Got the rugby style punt,
I know.
And
rolls out forever.
Right, just get a couple extra yards. And then, of course, Oregon State, one of the things that I really liked from them was that they brought back the end around, and then they actually ran a reverse as well to Champ. But the end around to Tyjon Lindsey, you get the defense flowing one way, and you bring Tyjon back around the other way. Nice wrinkle. I thought Brian Lindgren and Tim Tibesar, both the coordinators, I thought they called great games.
Offensively, that was the best called game I've seen in a long time.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
And just from the perspective of, Jake might have looked a little rattled in the third quarter, but for the most part, again, no turnovers. Really good job taking care of the ball.
He looked calm also.
Yeah.
I was kind of wondering if he's going to get a little flustered like they have, like you saw against Hawaii.
Right.
Just the offense wasn't clicking in any way, but they regrouped, kind of took it back maybe to the basics, but they looked good in the fourth quarter coming out there.
I think is a good word for it. Yeah. Did a great job. And like you said, we're a little rattled in the third quarter, but then that fourth quarter drive. And one of the other things that came from Lindgren earlier this week in practice was he said that Oregon State, they knew that they were going to go for it. So you remember that big 3rd and 10 play on that last drive, and they ran the ball with Pearson. That's one of those calls where they picked up 20 yards, and you're like, okay, that's a great play call. But if they didn't get any, then you're kind of like, oh, I wonder how good of a play call that actually was. And at the same time, I guess Jonathan Smith had told Lindgren, if we don't get it, we're going for it on 4th down anyway. So Lindgren had that in his back pocket. So he thought, well, might as well, worst case scenario, we get 5. Best case scenario, we pick up the 1st. And obviously, best case scenario happened.
And they've gone for it more on 4th down than any other team in the conference. So
right. Yeah, obviously, Smith showed he's willing to go for it. You got to love it.
If they work, you're going to like him. If not.
Right, exactly. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. We'll be back with Brenden Slaughter from beaversedge.com. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the Cal-Oregon State game and get into Riley Sharp, redshirt freshman. Obviously, he's 22 years old. Got a really awesome story from him. So we're going to go ahead and get a quick chat with Brenden. But right now, we'll take a quick break. You're listening to the Beaver Sports Radio Show on KBVR, Corvallis.
Do you want to keep up with everything from KBVR FM? On our Twitter at KBVR_FM, you can talk with your favorite DJ, stay up on the latest from our music blog, and let us know what you've been listening to. We care about what you have to say here at your college station, 88.7 FM, KBVR, Corvallis.
In this political climate, it's more important than ever to know who carries your voice in government. Oregon Senators are Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley, and the 4th District's Peter DeFazio represents the area around the OSU campus and House of Representatives. To make your voice heard, you can find emails and phone numbers for your congresspeople at senate.gov and house.gov. To go beyond the headlines and sound bites to get a better sense of how complex political issues affect us here at home, you can listen to Orange Media Network's Perspectives podcast with me, Joe Wolf. Perspectives is available on iTunes and Google Play. Just search Orange Media Network Perspectives and subscribe.
At Beaver's Digest, our publication is divided into 3 sections: Create, Experience, and #GoBeaves. In Create, the focus is on building a creative and healthy lifestyle. The experience section is where BD highlights key student figures in hopes to elevate their voices in the greater Corvallis community. The third section, #GoBeavs, is where we seek to cover anything OSU sports or spirit related. You can check out our latest issue on stands around campus now.
So we are back here on the Beaver Sports Radio Show, joined by Beaver's Edge managing editor Brenden Slaughter. Brenden, how you doing today?
Pretty good. It's a beautiful day here in the Willamette Valley. Lots of sunshine in October, so pretty good day.
You know, we were just talking about that earlier, how nice it is to finally get a sunny day here in fall. It seems like we've been getting a lot of rain. Anyways, we'll go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yep, exactly. We'll go ahead and dive in. I just wanted to get your initial thoughts from the Oregon State Cal game. Obviously 21-17, and we were talking about it earlier a little bit. This is a team that, you know, would have probably folded in the second half there, especially with 17 unanswered from California. So what have you noticed this year that's different from past Beaver teams?
I think it's just more the familiarity and the comfort level in the system and being led by the right leaders, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You know, you look at what Oregon State has been the last few years. They've been trying to rebuild this program, and there's always been a 2 steps back, 1 step forward kind of a mentality. There'd be something good, but then there'd be something bad, and the bad was just not able to get, you know, over the top, so Oregon State would struggle in games. Now that you're seeing Jonathan Smith every game get his guys a little bit more in tune to what he wants to do, we're starting to see better results. And now you could argue that the Oregon State rebuild is further along than we would have expected at this point. And, you know,
right.
You obviously can go back and look, but Oregon State very well could be 4-2 or, you know, even 5-1 this season.
Yeah, don't look now, but second place in the Pac-12. And, you know, a couple of people have mentioned it. If USC beats Oregon and Oregon State runs the table, not that it's likely, you're looking at a civil war for the Rose Bowl.
Could you imagine? First time since 2009. I think Oregon State fans would clamor for that.
Unbelievable. Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit also about practice today. You were there for BeaversEdge.com covering that, and a couple of big storylines coming out of there. Number one, David Morris and his foot injury. You know, obviously he's been struggled to get healthy from that, and just kind of take me through what you learned today about David Morris's health and his playing time.
Yeah, so big news for Beaver fans, obviously. David Morris, today Steve Gress of the Corvallis Gazette-Times and I got a chance to talk to him just after the main media interviews had ended, and he was able to kind of tell us what's been going on with him personally lately, and he was very open. You know, he said that foot pain and having pain is something that he's probably going to have for the rest of his life. So that's kind of a big shock right off the bat.
Yeah.
He said that he's going to have to manage pain in order to play, and that there's nothing they can really do for his feet in terms of fixing it moving forward. And right now, the way he made it sound was he was able to play that Cal game by adrenaline and some painkillers and then so on and so forth. So not the best thing you want to hear, but you also got to give David Morris credit for, going to the coaching staff and saying, I'm going to play, and a guy that wants to lay it all on the line for his teammates.
And he's also looking at Pro Football Focus's, grades. He was their highest graded defensive player, 85.7, 6 tackles and a forced fumble. I mean, he's instrumental to this defense.
First team all freshman his freshman year. Yeah.
He is kind of that little missing link that really puts everything together. He talked about it today. He and Jalen Moore have a chemistry back there at the safety spots that was unmatchable by any other number of guys. And David talked about they grew that chemistry in 2017 and have been waiting to get back on the field together. And they, know each other's tendencies, strengths, weaknesses. So Morris being back just really anchors the secondary in a lot of ways. And, if he can continue to play through the pain, you see the kind of player he can be, because he is one of Oregon State's, if not their best, overall defender in terms of what he can do and what he brings to the field. So good news for Oregon State fans that he's willing to put through the pain. However, it could be like a time bomb waiting to happen in terms of a more serious injury as well.
Right. And I think additionally, David Morris really brings the fact that you can let your corners, you can change up the coverage because he's kind of that safety net behind him.
Oh, 100%. You talk about, not to knock on, Omar Hicks-Onu, who transferred from the program this last week.
Right.
But that was just an ability that Omar did not have. Omar was not quite as rangy and athletic as David is. And now that you have Jalen and David in there, you have two guys that can come up, lay the lumber at the line of scrimmage and make physical tackles if need be, and also can step back in coverage. And then, one guy's, free safety, one's strong. They both can rotate that pretty easily. And, the ceiling for those two could be very high. And, the Oregon State secondary, as you mentioned, it allows Isaiah Dunn to have more one-on-one opportunities. It allows Nashawn Wright. And then knowing that you got two good safeties over the top, that could certainly help, fix Oregon State's pass defense.
Right. And I think that also with Morris back, you get kind of, you mentioned it, but like you put Morris as that free safety, and then you let Moore kind of be that strong safety, the hitting, run support. That's kind of his forte also.
Oh, 100%. And, you look at what Jalen does really well is, he led the team in tackles a year ago.
Yeah.
Obviously not the kind of a stat you want your safety to collect, but David Morris, as a true freshman in 2017, was right near the top of tackles as well. So that tells me Oregon State's got two really good tackling safeties and guys that can kind of be those last lines of defense, so to speak.
Right. So one of the other stories, and I'm just going to kind of let you run with this, but 5 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and a pass breakup. Riley Sharp, redshirt freshman. Not a lot of guys know who he is. What can you tell us about him and just about his story? Because it's such an awesome story.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil the whole story, so I'm going to tell everyone to go to beaversedge.com
of course
tomorrow morning to read the feature on Riley Sharp. But given a little taste, Riley Sharp was a LDS mission kid. He was class of 2016, originally committed for Gary Anderson's staff. And long story short is he went to Asheville, North Carolina to do his mission stateside. And he, stayed on with Oregon State. As soon as 2018, his mission was wrapping up. He got some messages from Jonathan Smith, Tim Tibesar, so they still wanted him to be part of the program. And, he even had a little Oregon State magic kind of come his way, as opposed to in terms of he was at a Ross in North Carolina in Asheville, and was going to buy himself a new pair of shoes, and stumbled upon a triple XL Oregon State T-shirt in Asheville, North Carolina.
Wow.
And he said right then and there that was a sign from God that he needed to honor his commitment. And, I'll have a lot more tomorrow. I have, quotes from Tibesar and Smith about him as well. But the ceiling for Riley Sharp, it's immense. I mean, having a guy that's 21 years old as a redshirt freshman, going to be 22 next week,
wow,
that's the maturity. And you just got to love that in a defense. And, for where his potential could be by the time he's 25 years old, wow, that's exciting.
Well, you see that in the defense. I mean, I mentioned earlier, I spoke to Jaden Grant yesterday on the phone, and he was talking about how compared to last year at this season, the defense is just a super tightly knit group in his quote. They seem more disciplined compared to last year. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would almost just say that's more so being in the second year. You look at last year and where that defense was. When Jonathan Smith and Tim Tibesar came in December of 2017, I don't know that there was any defensive coordinator in the country that wanted that job. Oregon State was, their last game of that year got beat 69-10 against Oregon, the Civil War. They had players getting into fights on the sideline. It was not a good time. And then now you look at how Jonathan's come in. He's been the calming presence. He's wanted to get guys that are going to be here and want to be here, and the guys that haven't wanted to be here have been allowed to leave and go pursue other endeavors. And I think that's really been the difference, is that everyone that's here is wanting to be here, and right now they're all bought in because you actually see success like Cal happen, and those players can finally feel and taste that success. And, for a young team, momentum's a really big thing, and if they can continue to taste success, the sky could be the limit for this group.
One of those young players who's really stepped into a big role this year, Omar Spates. I mean, Shamar Smith goes down, your senior middle linebacker, one of those anchors who's been there, And then Spates comes in and doesn't even skip a beat hardly. I mean, he even got in on a sack, a handful of tackles. I mean, this kid's impressive.
Yeah, no, you talk about a guy like Omar Spates, came out to Crescent Valley, for his senior year of high school, was obviously a local ad, half brother of Jeremy Reichner. So obviously, really invested in the team itself. But Coach Bray talked about him a couple weeks ago, just said that like Avery Roberts, who's a redshirt sophomore, just the ceiling for Omar Spates is just immense. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
Don't know his exact age, but he's a true freshman.
Right.
So, for where these guys could be in 2-3 years, I mean, it's not just them. You look at a guy like JoJo Forrest, a guy like Keely Arnold. There are some guys on this team that by the time they're sophomores, juniors, and seniors, Oregon State could have a really, really deep defense that has a lot of experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I don't know how many people would have said, next year you're going to be sitting 7 weeks into the season talking on a Beaver Sports radio show about Oregon State's defense.
Yeah, I actually was on with Ron Callan on his radio show at iHeartMedia last night. We were talking about it. We were just saying, when was the last time that you saw an Oregon State defense rise to the occasion in like a statement victory? And for me, it was the 2016 Civil War. Mm-hmm. And that's the last time, that was what the Cal game was for me in terms of comparable beating a marquee opponent. I don't want to throw any shade at UCLA or Colorado, those two wins, but I think this Cal win was one that the Beavers, from start to finish, they earned, and this is one you can put up on your mantle a little bit.
Right, and one of the guys who's been so instrumental in this defense that we haven't even talked about yet is Hamika Rashid Jr.
Oh, yeah.
What can't you say about Ham?
I mean, first in the Pac-12 in sacks, tackles for loss. He's second nationally in tackles for loss and third nationally in sacks. I mean, and this was a kid who a lot of Oregon State people were high on coming out of high school. And, it's just really clicked for him this year. Second year in the system, working with Tibesar and probably a little bit with Coach Bray as well. But, I mean, he's really just burst onto the scene this season saying, I'm here.
Yeah, it's funny. For anyone that really knew what Tim Tibesar was about and knew the potential that Hamilcar Rashid had, and I like to think that I did, saw this coming because if you look back at the outside linebackers that Tim Tibesar had at Wisconsin, you're talking T.J. Watt, Joe Schober. I mean, just really, really, really good outside linebackers that just feasted on sacks, tackles for loss, all that in his system. And you look at the build of Ham, the speed of Ham, the aggression, the leadership, and just the tenacity to want to win. And it's got Tibesar. That's got to be one of the better outside linebackers he's had. He's probably starting to climb up that list. Mm-hmm. And Tibesar said it again today. He still doesn't think he's scratched the ceiling on what he can do.
Wow.
I want to ask you one question. Jump ahead to next week's matchup against Arizona and their recent struggle against the dual threat quarterback in Tyler Huntley. How do you feel or assume they're going to prepare for Khalil Tate?
Yeah, Khalil Tate's going to be an interesting challenge because you don't really know which Khalil Tate you're going to get.
Yeah.
Kevin Sumlin has been a bit of a square peg in a round hole, in my opinion, down there in Tucson, and I don't think he's necessarily handled Khalil Tate's skill set quite the way that Rich Rodriguez did. When Rich Rod found Khalil Tate was able to run that up a couple years ago, there was a reason he was going to be on preseason Heisman watches the next year and was last year because the kid displayed Lamar Jackson-type running and passing ability. Kevin Sumlin comes in, Noel Mazzone comes in, offensive coordinator, Tate, and then, they start to run the ball with Tate a lot less. And he doesn't run the ball hardly at all anymore. So with that being said, they might try to open up some things, but I don't think running is necessarily a big part of what Sumlin and Noel Mazzone do on offense. I think they've essentially limited that part of Tate's game, and that benefits the Beavers greatly.
So I guess Stanford's playing Arizona next week, and that'll really be, I think, a good gauge for where Oregon State's going to be going into that game.
Absolutely.
But last week against USC, they went a lot with Grant Gunnell, and So obviously Stanford has said, David Shaw came out this week and said, we're preparing for Khalil Tate at quarterback, and obviously Kevin Sumlin on the other, and Khalil Tate's still our starter. What are the odds that Arizona perhaps makes a quarterback change before Oregon State? Or is it contingent upon what happens at Stanford against Stanford this weekend?
I wouldn't be surprised to see Arizona make a change, but if they did, I think that would be a huge missed opportunity. You look at Khalil Tate. After the whole Rich Rod thing went down, Khalil Tate was thinking about transferring. He nearly could have, and he ended up staying. I thought he had really good pro prospect potentials. I thought he would have had to run a little bit less, but he's got a strong arm. He can make a lot of throws on the run, and now you're just kind of seeing that maybe Arizona's not super high on him. And, it's almost just kind of like, it'd be like if you had Justin Herbert, if you're Oregon. You don't bench Khalil Tate the same way you don't bench Justin Herbert because he's more athletically gifted than 95% of the players on that field.
Yeah.
Period.
Again, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Beaver Sports Radio Show. We've got Brenden Slaughter, managing editor at beaversedge.com, joining us on the line. And I guess, Brenden, do you have anything you want to wrap this up with? Any forward thoughts going or things you'd like to promote?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely, like I said, check out that Riley Sharp feature coming up. It's going to be exciting to learn about his story to Oregon State and how a couple FaceTimes and a T-shirt helped him get there. But other than that, no, I appreciate you guys having me on, and it's always fun to come back and join KBVR. I miss the good old days.
Right. Forgot to mention that, but Brenden Slaughter, a former KBVR broadcaster, he's been in this DJ booth several times, as well as behind the mic a lot, calling games, and it was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, I think Oregon, they have an opportunity in front of them. We'll see what happens, but optimism is high, and when you see like today, just smiles coming out of Valley Football Center, that's something you haven't seen a ton of in the past. So that's all good.
Yep, always. Love to have a win going into a bye. Oregon State 3-4, 5 games to go. We'll see how the rest of the season pans out. But again, as always, great to chat with you and appreciate you coming on.
Anytime, guys. Thank you so much.
Again, that was Brenden Slaughter, beaversedge.com managing editor. And Soren, I guess, what are your thoughts or takeaways from that going forward? Obviously, you could look ahead to Arizona. We can go back and talk a little bit more about the Cal game. I mean, either way, Oregon State is looking really promising going forward.
Absolutely. As was explained by Brenden, it's nice to dwell on the past a little bit in the sense that it was a win, but at the same time, I do want to jump ahead to this next game against Arizona, just because it is almost a trap game in a sense, because we don't really know which Arizona we're going to get, and we don't know which Khalil Tate we're going to get. So looking forward to this matchup, of course. And we do have a bye, which was much needed after playing two teams with a bye week. But as he was referencing to, and you were talking about, the defense was so impressive in this game. They held them to no touchdowns in the first half. It was the first time in, I believe, 3 seasons, Sunset.
Right, and it was almost a shutout, too.
No, yeah. I mean, the field goal at the end of the half was the only thing that happened.
Yeah, so Oregon State's defense really stepped up, but again, and you talked about it, this is one of those things that they struggled with. We were talking earlier, failure to close games. And that's one of those, when you're talking about Arizona, one of those things that becomes a struggle, because Khalil Tate is one of those guys who you can never count out a Khalil Tate football team. And I guess it's disappointing the way he is, at least in my opinion, underused at Arizona, because they really wanted to turn him into a pocket passer. That's how Kevin Sumlin's like, you're going to make it in the NFL if you become a pocket passer. And so for him, it's a lot of making those adjustments, but at a certain point, I think you just got to let him be an athlete, what's going to give you the best shot to win if you're Arizona.
Well, you're seeing that in Lamar Jackson in the NFL, as was referenced earlier. John Harbaugh has done a good job of just kind of letting him go. A lot of it's just audibles, kind of improvisation from talented players of that sort. And you saw a lot of that in his freshman season. Right. And he was listed, I remember this, on the cover of Sports Illustrated as the best player in college football, period, before it was, I believe, last season's college football season.
Yeah.
But they have had 2 tough losses in a row. I mean, they got blown out, if we're being honest, to USC and Washington. And they did barely lose to Hawaii as well. So it could be an even game. And this next weekend will be a good indicator when they play Stanford and how it will match up for Oregon State.
Right. And one of those things that when I was looking at Oregon State's schedule, especially after the Utah game, I was looking, what are some winnable games that were left? First one I checked off was Cal. And the next one was Arizona. And then the last one was against Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can add Washington to that list now also.
And okay, I was just talking about this with some friends. Washington looks like a winnable game. Of course, Washington will be playing Utah next, so maybe they'll lose and have a comeback game against Oregon State. But Washington State looks promising at Washington State. Arizona State, we really don't know how good they are either.
Right.
But
and yeah, especially with the way that Jaden Daniels, who looks fantastic all season, came out flat against the Utah defense. I mean,
Utah did look really good.
Yeah,
again,
I still think they're the best team in the conference.
I might agree with you.
A lot of people are giving the Ducks credit, and not to take anything away from the Ducks and what they've done this season, but Utah just all the way around.
So
when
well coached.
So here's the thing: when they lost to USC, they didn't have Zach Moss.
Nope.
It was a Friday night.
Always weird in the
down
Pac-12.
in the Coliseum. That's another reason why I kind of I'm like, well, what's going to go on here with the Washington game? Because Friday night, Washington's on the road. You've got Jonathan Smith, Chris Peterson coaching tree, protege. I mean, it's a story that writes itself. I don't want to.
I have an odd feeling that this could really ruin the Pac-12's hopes at any outside shot of the playoff because Utah could lose, play Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. If Oregon wins or not, it's not as impressive of a victory. Washington still is a talented club, but really don't know what's going to happen. Like we mentioned, those weeknight games are always weird.
Yeah.
I remember growing up watching Oregon. It seems like any meaningful Thursday night or Friday night game, they'd blow. Yeah. And it always happened to be at Arizona too.
Especially when they were favorites.
Not to speak in ultimatums, but still.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, that's a lot of good stuff coming up. Of course, we can look ahead as it's Oregon State's headed into the bye week. So other games going on in the Pac-12 this week. We've got USC is playing Colorado, Arizona and Stanford, as we mentioned before. That USC Colorado game, by the way, is a Friday night game. So they got another one of those.
USC will win that one.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. And then Arizona and Stanford. I don't know. I kind of like Stanford.
It's at Stanford too, yeah.
Right, Stanford's kind of started to come around, but they, UCLA beat them, but then they also, they've looked so good at times. So, and then Arizona State plays UCLA, and lastly to close it off, Cal and Utah, the battle of the defenses. So, Pac-12 standings. You look at the North. And then these are just conference records. You got Oregon 4-0, Oregon State 2-2, Washington 2-3, Stanford 2-3. Of course, one of those wins coming against the Beavers. Cal 1-3, Washington State 1-3. The overall records, Oregon's at 6-1. So I mean, and then you've got Washington at 5-3, Cal and Washington State at 4-3, and then Stanford and Oregon State at 3-4.
You've got to wonder if every team here was entirely healthy. Right. What it would really look like. We can't speak in ifs terms, but Cal did look good for that first healthy stretch, but Oregon State was clearly the underdog for everyone. It was Oregon, probably Washington, then Stanford, Washington State, and then probably 50 feet of something, and then Oregon State in the preseason standings.
Yeah.
And it's just really impressive what's happened this year. I mean, we can't emphasize it enough, but it's almost just, you have to pinch yourself at times. Just, it's been so long that this has happened. It seems like, at least for our time in college, that this new culture and everything's revolving around Smith is really cool to see.
Right. And one of the things is that I was just looking the other day and going back, because I was kind of thinking about the Jonathan Smith and what he's done. And I was looking at some of the candidates that Oregon State was looking at once Gary Anderson left. And some of the top names on there, Bo Baldwin, the Cal offensive coordinator, And that's really who it came down to at the end was Beau Baldwin and Jonathan Smith.
Seems like a no-brainer at that point, though.
When you're looking back on it, I mean, especially with what's the struggles with the Cal offense.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't know a whole bunch about Jonathan Smith. Pretty quiet guy, co-offensive coordinator. Obviously, from the Chris Peterson coaching tree, and Chris Peterson, when he went from Boise State to Washington, brought Smith with him. So you knew he was qualified. You knew he was a smart guy. Just didn't know about what he could do as a head coach.
Yeah.
And that Beau Baldwin had success as a head coach. Granted, it was at a lower level with Eastern Washington. But still, I mean, there was all sorts of names being thrown out there. Scott Frost was a long shot name being mentioned. People were talking about, Les Miles that, there was never any interest, but just some of the names that were being thrown around. And it's like, okay, what if Oregon State had made that big hire and it hadn't worked out? Yeah. So it's just interesting because Jonathan's just done such a good job. And I don't think that you would be here, we'd be here sitting talking about it if they didn't, have such a bad time before, because not only has he turned the wins from 1 and 2 into 3 and who knows how many more, but it's a different culture around Oregon State football. It's not a team they're having fun. I think that's the easiest way to put it is they're having fun. Smith's having fun, and they're making, Oregon State football is now something that, hey, what's going on at Oregon State, especially you talk about the recruiting and stuff like that. It's incredible. And, just kudos to Smith and his staff and what they've done.
Speaking of that, Dennis Erickson, of course, was honored into the College Football Hall of Fame this year, former Beavers coach from 99 to 2002, I believe.
Yeah.
But, of course, took them to the Fiesta Bowl, greatest season in history for Oregon State. But he coached for schools like Miami, won a couple national titles there, coached in the NFL, other areas.
Niners,
But he said the biggest regret he made in his coaching career was leaving Oregon State. And he, of course, took a team with some guys with maybe some chips on their shoulders, JUCO kids coming
Chad
into Oregon
Johnson,
State, of course.
TJ Houshmandzadeh, some of those big names.
The legend says
Ken
he never showed up
Simonton.
to class in his time here. Not that we are...
Not that you ever go to class.
Oh, yeah. No, but we are not promoting that message here. But the fact that he's getting these guys that maybe weren't as highly recruited, that's always it's a common notion in a school that's maybe not at the top of their league. Like Washington State's an example with Mike Leach and his odd system, the mad scientist of college football. But you do see it in their warm-ups, how they're having fun during the game, but they have this intensity to it too. And Jaden was mentioning, it was just kind of the way that he was going about the questions. And he's just like, it's almost like there's something building up here that people aren't really aware of.
And a lot of it has to do with Oregon State. You always see when they go on the road, especially it's the most prominent on Twitter, but it's business trip.
Yeah.
We're here to do business. We're not here to, mess around, not here to party. It's, we're here to play football games. We're here to win.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I wanted to kind of spin off on that. So Oregon State, obviously a team that struggled on the road. They win against UCLA down in the Rose Bowl. Beat California in Memorial Stadium.
Road games.
And they're struggling at home. Do you think that has anything to do with the fans and the turnout and the support that Oregon State gets at home? Because, you think about the Utah game, and not only did the stadium not even fill up, but people were already leaving after the first quarter.
Are you thinking they feel almost a sign of disrespect maybe? Or is it just...
And I think that as a player, you would feel more inclined to, play harder for a bunch of, or a group or fan base, students.
Students are
fans.
great. We can't take that away. They do sell out for the most part,
right. The one thing that I have noticed is, at least my freshman year, the student section was, it'd be packed from end to end. And, if you were there 10, 15 before kickoff, you couldn't even get a spot in one of the end zone corners. Now, those end zone corners are kind of open. So, even that kind of dwindles a little, but I don't know if that makes a difference. It's just something I was kind of thinking about is there, because Oregon State, you heard them on the road at least, I don't know if you did, I watched the game on Pac-12 Network, but, you could hear Beaver fans cheering. They were almost louder than Cal fans there, and it was Cal's homecoming.
Yeah.
And that's what
They had a good turnout, too.
Right.
Huge stadium.
And that seemed to be the case for, especially against Utah, even though it was a blowout. I mean, it's, especially when I'm calling the games and I'm seeing people leaving, it's like, okay, well, you could at least stay until at least halftime.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
That's right when the game gets out of hand, they don't. It's almost like they haven't trusted them in the last couple of years. Like, oh, here goes this again.
Right.
But this, I feel like this is a sense of like proving, maybe a statement that they're not making to their fans as much as it is to them. Because what I like about this team is it seems like they're playing for each other. Maybe not for other people. They have that chip on their shoulder, but I mean, if the fans aren't going to show them respect, then they don't need to show it back. But there is a loyal group, of course, not dissing on Beavers fans. But
yeah. Oh no, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking from at the same time, it's a two-way street. It's you want to see winning to, show up and stay for entire games.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that almost makes you a fair weather fan, and yet everybody's calling themselves diehard Beaver fans, and then you're leaving after the start of the game.
Description of a fair weather fan. I'd agree with you
Right,
there.
exactly. So
Hop
anyway.
on the wagon when they play well.
Right. So anyways, let's go ahead and transition. We've talked a little bit more football than we'd planned on, but tonight we got an exhibition game here in Gill Coliseum, Oregon State and Carroll College. That'll tip off at 7 o'clock. What are your thoughts going into the Oregon State season? I mean, I think this is probably one of the better teams that they've had, and of course they did lose Stephen Thompson Jr., but yeah.
I am thrilled for this season. I can't tell you how excited I am. I really think we're going to make the tournament this year.
Okay.
Bold call, of course.
Bold take.
But last season, was it 13 games by 5 points or fewer we lost?
Something like that.
I went to 3 or 4
Went from
games.
first place till fourth place right at the end of the season.
Exactly. No, and we were right on the edge of being an NIT to NCAA tournament squad.
They were a tournament bubble team before they went on the losing streak at the end of there, and I hate to say it, but it looked like the team kind of just quit at the end of it.
So one of the games that I found this to be interesting against was UW. Oh, they're more talented. They are overmatched in athleticism against the Beavers squad last year. But you see the energy in Tinkle, Coach Tinkle, that is, and he brings it out in the student or in his players. And also, one thing about basketball, thanks to the women's program right now, is we have a really solid fan base here. But there's something about them being counted out and being on that edge so much. And in regards to other sports at the school also and the changing culture of it, I do think that this team will have success. I think that Oregon's going to take some time to get going into their rhythm as they typically do towards the end of the season. UW and Colorado are going to be talented, but I think this could be a 4-5 NCAA tournament Pac-12 season.
Right, and so the last time the Beavers made the tournament was with Gary Payton 2.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So GP2 the last time he was here, and now, Oregon State as they enter, I believe it's is it the 5th year under Wayne Tinkle?
Yes.
Something like that.
6th, maybe.
Yeah, 5th or 6th.
Well, they don't have that difficult of a schedule other than Iowa State and Oklahoma outside of Pac-12 play. These are very winnable games. They could be 9-2 or so, maybe even better going into at Texas A&M's another good one.
Right. So one of the things that not a lot of people are going to like to hear, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyways, okay? I think this is a better team without Stephen Thompson Jr.
You think so?
I think he held him back.
Offensively, the amount he shoots, or in terms
I think he was a liability on the defensive end. He wasn't efficient enough offensively, and he held the ball too much, and they didn't move the ball offensively enough. It was too much. Stephen Thompson Jr., I'm going to ISO, and then end up missing a shot.
I see what you mean there. One thing also this year I'm very excited for is Zach Reichel. I feel like he's kind of coming into his own. I used to play at Westland, which used to play against Wilsonville. We always knew he was a good player, but he just looks like a physical specimen for like his position out there. And if he gets confident and in a rhythm with his shot, I think that he could be pretty deadly.
Yeah, and one of the other things is that every time you get another year in the system, it's always going to help. You're always going to benefit. Reichel's going to benefit from
him. You can see it out there. He loves all of his players.
Right, and he's one of those guys. I think the biggest thing for him is confidence.
Yeah.
Because you see, I watched him several times. He get the ball out for three, and he's got 5-7 feet. Exactly. Thinking about it too much. But Oregon State, so they've added quite a few guys this year. So obviously, they've got walk-on and Isaac Barnes, who's the son of Scott Barnes, and then you're adding a transfer who had to sit out last year, but has been with the team for a year. Peyton Dastrup came from BYU, right? Yeah. Julian Franklin, true freshman. You got Gianni Hunt, true freshman. Bishop Montgomery, you got a little pipeline going there. Gerard Lucas from Los Altos High School, Hacienda Heights. Sean Miller-Moore, he's going to be, I'm super excited for him. 6'5" guard wing combo from Toronto. Shout out the 6.
Wow.
Joey Potts is 6'10" forward. Roman Silva, 7'1" center. De'Aaron Tucker, and obviously then you've got the returning cast. But
what do you think about Kyler Kelly this year?
That's my next question for you. Who's the most instrumental piece? And I was going to say Kyler Kelly because, man, he's so good.
He can be. He really can.
When he is out there affecting shots defensively, once he develops his offensive game just that much more.
It's a little bit there. And then, gain some weight. You see him.
Yep.
I hate saying that. People in basketball, growing up as a skinny guy, everyone just says you gotta put on some muscle or something. But seriously, watching him down there against teams like Washington and whatnot, who's Washington center, that big guy?
Can't think of the name right off the top of my head.
Just getting kind of pushed around down there is going to help him so much if he can be more of a physical presence, because he is easily the best shot blocker in the Pac-12. He'll get a lot of rebounds and stuff, but it also helps that Tinkle is a former center.
Noah Dickerson.
Yeah. Of course.
There we go. I could get the Noah. I couldn't get the rest of it.
But I feel like Kyler with Coach Tinkle being able to put him under his arm, kind of tell him this is what we're doing. Like, be positive with him at the same time of grinding into him when he needs to be.
I'm ready to see Ethan take over the offense.
Yeah.
Mr. California, you've got a huge list, including one of the guys that just comes right off the top of my head, Jason Kidd.
Yeah.
Aaron Gordon.
Kawhi.
Yep. Kawhi Leonard.
Who's Kawhi Leonard? Never heard of him.
Don't know the guy. Anyway, hey. So Oregon State's going to, I think they got a lot coming together for them this season. Excited to see what they can do. Obviously, Trace Tinkle, he's got a shot to go for Pac-12 Player of the Year. And like you said, they've got a chance to make a tournament run, but, I can't remember. Oregon State they were picked to finish 4th.
They're hovering around 6th to 8th on most of the lists I've seen, which I'm astounded by.
I'm curious who's number 1.
Colorado and Oregon for the most part.
Okay, I was going to say Oregon's got a really good freshman class coming in. I know that.
As always.
Right.
It'll take some time for them to get used to each other.
And then Colorado's got their point guard.
Yeah. USC, I'm pretty sure, and Arizona. Okay. I think Arizona's ranked to start the year also.
Right, Arizona's. They're always good, but if talk about spending some money to get some players. They got a lot of stuff going on down there.
I don't know what Sean Miller's doing.
Exactly, Sean Miller's in trouble. But either way, and interestingly enough, it's pretty funny because Oregon State, they've got Sean Miller-Moore. So there you go. But
Arizona State always with
right. Bobby
Hurley's club.
Yeah.
They've upset Kansas. Is it 2 years in a row now? Like they have in football at Michigan State 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
UCLA, Sharif O'Neal, he's has a heart surgery situation
right
after his knee.
And then UCLA just got the 5-star center as well. I'm trying to think of his name is also.
No, Jalen Noel is probably like a first-round prospect for Washington.
And Washington. One of the guys on Washington that I've always liked to watch, Isaiah Carter.
Yeah.
Jay-Z's nephew, actually.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Jay-Z's nephew. Pretty cool.
That one.
The Carter. So that's and Noah Dickerson, I believe, was a senior last year, but he's always.
And they got a Kentucky transfer.
Stud.
Quade Green.
Oh, yeah. He's a very good player also. So, a lot of competition in the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 has kind of always been the powerhouse for women's basketball, But now you're starting to see it a little more with the men's side as well. I mean,
it takes its turns.
Right. Because, I mean, UCLA is always going to be good. Or should say usually is going to be pretty good.
They have their teams.
Right. I mean,
Oregon
I remember
solidified them spot.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember when Lonzo Ball threw a 3/4 court lob in Gill Coliseum, and it was just like, oh my goodness, this guy's so good. I believe it was somebody who's got picked up on a practice squad. But regardless, I mean, it was just the Arizona and UCLA and USC and those teams always seem to be good in basketball, and that's why it was
talent, but they just
can't put it all together. Yeah. But so I don't know. I guess where would you put Oregon State in the Pac-12 if you had to make a prediction?
I would have for a regular season projection how it's going to finish by the end of the only regular season, not Pac-12 tournament, anything like that. I'd have Washington. I would have Colorado. I'd have Oregon. Then Arizona. Then Oregon State.
Wow.
But I do think Oregon State can sneak into that last spot with a really solid out-of-conference record, and then winning some key games, maybe winning some that they shouldn't lose, or lose some they shouldn't, win some they shouldn't.
Right. Arizona, one of the players I just saw came up that I forgot about, Josh Green.
Yeah.
He's a big recruit for them. But, yeah, Oregon. And then I always like what Mike Hopkins, I said it before, is doing up at UW. I mean, always got a great program. Syracuse, longtime Syracuse assistant.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty interesting. Mike Hopkins actually played at the same time Stephen Thompson Sr. did.
Really?
At Syracuse. And I believe, if I remember correctly, they got into a fight during the I think it was I want to say Thompson was a senior and he was a freshman, and it was just a practice. It wasn't like a real fight. It was just like a little scrappy thing. But and then they went on to become friends, and now they're both coaching in the
You need those moments.
Right. Exactly.
Especially when you're playing sports.
Yeah. And, the competitive drive and everything. So,
of course.
So Arizona's number 21, Oregon's number 15 in the preseason poll, which
I think Oregon might struggle regular season, but turning on like last year.
Right. But again, that's why it's a preseason poll. Of course, Michigan State was just about a unanimous number 1 for the first time ever. And, Tom Izzo couldn't even believe it. He says, I think it was on ESPN. Tom Izzo goes, he goes, yeah, well, I thought that Magic team might have been 1. Nope. Turns out the team with Magic was 7th.
Whoa.
Yeah, preseason. So.
Wow.
All right, Soren. Well, it's 5:59. Going to go ahead and wrap things up. You got any final thoughts? Of course, the Beavers have a bye this week in football. Exhibition basketball game tonight at 7 p.m. And the Team USA game coming up as a week from Monday.
Cannot wait. Yes.
That'll
November 4th.
Right.
So, yeah.
So anything else you got to leave our listeners with?
When we have home games, and I will say we.
Yes.
Oregon State community, show up to your football games, sporting events in general, not just football. They need you.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. As always, thank you for tuning in. For Soren, Carr, and my name is Mitchell Monge. We appreciate you. Rob back in the booth, who is our
shout out
basically
Rob.
Producer. Rob doing a great job again. Brenden Slaughter, appreciate you coming on, you guys. And as always, if you missed any of the talk show, you can go ahead and go to KBVR TV on YouTube, where you can find full-length shows. Get to see me and you talking.
It's really fun stuff. Maybe rather listen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hey, you can always just put it on the side. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. Same time, same place, 5 o'clock, KBVR Corvallis for more Beaver Sports Radio Show. Until then, take it easy, Beaver fans.